And Dave on the board. Today is Sunday, November the 10th, 2019. I'd like to give everyone a really quick bicycle update. Oh my gosh, is it a gorgeous day out there. The temperature may not have quite hit 50, so you'll be tempted to bring a jacket with you. You'll probably leave it unzipped if you're out bicycling for at least 15 minutes because you'll warm up that fast. I do have to give you one warning. As beautiful as I think that the leaves are lying on the ground, and as they line the curbs, they're piled up all the way along the route, somewhere along the way, there's going to be a squirrel in those leaves. So be very careful. Suddenly, when you least expect it, a squirrel will leap out because you're going by, and for some reason, the little brains trigger, and they will leap out in front of you. The best solution, this sounds counterintuitive, ride at the squirrel. You're not going to squish it. Its little brain's going to fire before you get to it, and it will go one way or the other, and they're no longer in your way. So, but just be watching. They're out there all along the way, and of course, this is I'll call it the nutty time of year. They're looking for nuts because they're getting ready for the winter. So, but it's beautiful out there.
Probably slip on those wet leaves.
If the leaves, most of them it hasn't rained or anything for a while this week, so their leaves are pretty well off the street. They're just lining the gutters, hiding those mischievous little squirrels.
Well, we have a guest today, Ken Wang, and I'd like to discuss some of the things associated with ACE Awards for North. First, I'd like to remind you that there are a couple of dates here involved. On November 15th, that's Friday, Wendy Garrison will be here, and she will be walking the first acquisition of the Prairie Friends at Gifford, and you're welcome to join at 11:30. The same night there will be a Kickapoo Trail fundraiser at the Sleepy Creek Inn in Oakwood, South Oakwood, just by about a couple of miles, and you're welcome to join there. And on Saturday, Prairie Friends will have their 35th annual membership meeting at the Barnhart Prairie, which is south on Ray Street if you're in town. But give us a call if you have traction problems. 840-1911. 840-1911. Area code 217. We're coming to town. So the phone is ringing at the moment.
And they should stop. We're actually on the air, so there's no one to take the call.
What I'd like to say is that on Friday night we had a very good ACE Award meeting at the Central City Building just between Springfield and Green, and so Ian saw it, but I was standing and had a space at a table. He was center stage so he could photograph the awards event. And I thought that was an opportunity to bring the 40 North to a broader audience. And so Ian agreed, and he was taking single lens reflex photography, so we may be able to cover a few of the award winners, including Jason Finkelman, who has his program on WEFT and works with Cranit. Ian has been in this community for quite some time. He is Asian in background, but he'll tell you more. And he has been a stalwart in the art community. He has other qualifications, including medicine and public service, and he's interested in how art fits into the whole, rather than art being a totality on itself. We often wonder about that. The Arts Council is fairly purely an arts body, but often our interests are multimedia, they're biodiverse, and so we are getting into an era when there's more possibility to do biodiverse things. So, Ian, let me ask you to say something about who you are and what you're doing. And
Okay, just very brief. And basically, I studied medicine, graduated from medical school in China, and went to Oxford University in England.
Closer to the mic.
Okay, and should I start again? Okay, and then I went to Oxford University in England, studied social anthropology, epidemiology, and the management of healthcare. And I came to UFI, I think it was 1995. And so my background is science. However, since I came to here, I have got involved in the local arts world. And so I have been serving on the board of directors and of the Spurlock Museum since 1999. And I have been a curator of the East Asian Gallery of the Spurlock Museum. Also, I served on the 14 North board director for one term. And so I have been writing an art column in the Rantu Press weekly paper. Now it's a part of News Gazette weekly paper on the column called Art Equals Life since 2007. And because of that, all my love and involvement in arts, and I've been awarded twice of the ACE Awards. I think the first one, 2005, second one, 2008.
well, you also have been interested in the Air Force Base at Rantoul.
Yes. Part of my reason came to Champaign County or Illinois was my brother and I has a company called Amerinvest International, and the company is an Illinois company. My brother established in Chicago. But the reason we are involved in Chinook Air Force Base, the former Chinook Air Force Base, was 1993, Chinook Air Force Base closed. Yes. And my company came down from Chicago to Rantoul, started redeveloping some of the properties of former Chinook Air Force Base. The first program we got into was we wanted to develop a management training school for Asia. And then there was a cooperative joint venture in a way with the University of Illinois College of Commerce at that time. And the chief executive, let's start again. The International Chief Executive Training Center of the Business School was located here in Champaign-Urbana. And then we started that program with this center. Later, this center relocated to Chicago campus, but the program stayed, but not exactly the same. They changed it from the management, Chinese management training program to Chinese what's it called leadership program. That's my involvement, and so I have been serving on all sorts of boards in Iran to related to the redevelopment of Chinook Air Force Base, like base cleanup, base reuse, economic commission, so on and so forth.
Yes, so you had a close association with the Lincoln's Challenge.
Yes, and one of two of our company's redevelopment projects, the gymnasium and the theater, we remodeled, developed, and leased to Lincoln's Challenge program until they built their own campus.
Yes, and that's fairly recent.
You're right.
And Ian has been interested in other things other than art. He has a lot of art, and he presents it in such a way that people get to view it and enjoy it. And but one of the things I remember is I convinced Ian to come up and see a 9-acre prairie that we have just north of Rantoul, and it's kind of amazing. We would like it to be part of a 10-mile prairie from Rantoul to Paxton. And there's a couple of things that have happened this week that are kind of on the arts side, or very much on the arts side. One is the demolition of a high school building that is a Royer building that is rather an iconic building for the history of Paxton. So there have been people in Paxton trying to preserve this building. The demolition was brought forward from the 4th to the 18th, from the 18th to the 4th, and so there was a court injunction on Friday. The court injunction didn't succeed, but there was an appeal. But the demolition didn't wait for the appeal. They started to demolish the building on Monday morning. So architecture is also a part of our interest in art. And Royer had lots of buildings around here, mainly in the 20s and early 30s, and there are trail areas through the state that where he is represented by his buildings, many of which have been reconstituted as apartments or functionally reused. And the other thing was the ACE Awards, and we should say something about the 40 North. 40 North was preceded by an Illinois or Champaign-Urbana Arts Council, which operated in the 50s and 60s fairly strongly. They formed the Champaign-Urbana Symphony Orchestra, and that still exists. But some of the more art side of things faded. It's not unusual. Communities go through these phases. And so Zukolsky and a few others, you might remember them, put together for 40 North, not with the same name as the Arts Council, but with the same intent to encourage art. And that has established. Its CEO is Kelly White, and they do things like run the music Friday nights outside of Werft and in other places downtown. And they have an endless list of projects, and they let artists know what's going on and what might be applied for. And so
I think that's also important event. The Boneyard Arts Festival. Arts Festival started, I think, more than 12 years ago. I can't remember exactly. And interested in the history of the Boneyard Arts Festival, started for an artists' work. And downtown Champaign, I remember I went to the first one. I think only in downtown Champaign, in this, I call it a cultural square. It's the Main Street and the Walnut and the Neal Street, and here. And there were some architecture offices and windows. So I remember firstly 6 artists participated during the weekend. I think it was only Saturday, and started this artwork program. And then that developed, become annual events, and later became the Boneyard Arts Festival. And I have participated every single year in this Boneyard Arts Festival. And when I was in Rantoul, I had the Prairie Village Retirement Center. So during that time, I think I sponsored 9 years Boneyard Arts Festival for as a Rantoul venue. And I sold my retirement center to my partner. So that's why I no longer sponsor a site in Rantoul.
So they have an Banner Day on Friday and a Champagne Day on Saturday.
Yes.
And then an out-of-town
Right.
day on Sunday.
Right.
And it's been reasonably successful. Before that, there was an Art in the Park festival.
Yes, but I think Art in Park, if I'm correct, is organized by initiated by Park District.
Yes, 2 different.
But maybe 14 North was later become part of it.
The Art in the Park has taken on food and drink, so it is not quite as adaptable to juried artists. It's more arts and crafts, but it's still there. I'm not sure whether it's still there.
It is. This year they had one. They used to have at this downtown Champaign and the Neal Street.
Yes.
They blocked the Neal Street and the Market Street. So that's why I was call here Cultural Square. And I think this year they did at I don't know where they did it, but
Yes.
anyway, maybe in the park.
It's been more or less the taste of Champagne.
Right.
And artists do appear there. Let's look at the people that were awarded
This year, you mean?
this year. They are a diverse group
Right.
and different categories. So Jason Fingelman was awarded. He's an art administrator with Prairie, and that means often performing arts. But Jason also has a program on WEFT, which is alternative music, and that's one of his fortes.
I have known Jason for a long time. I think he just did everything possible and to promote the art, and then he started many programs. A couple of them like Asian Lens. It's a video program and discussion both academically and historically, artistically, and also dealing with some social issues. That one I remember he started a long time ago. I think it's still going on, and now sometimes they use the venue of Spurlock Museum, sometimes they use different venue, and Jason it's such the dedicated person, and in the local art, I think he really deserve this award.
We have Ika, who's lots of hair.
Yeah.
And she sort of found the community and found 40 North. And she listed many of the people who helped her. And I thought that there was very good because it sort of said that you don't always do this yourself. You have help on the way. You pick up on a technique that was invented by somebody else. So, and she was fun to have on board.
Yeah, I enjoyed her speech, and because I found her speech very personal, and down to earth, and very moving. Of course, and those awards recipients of this year, I think everyone did a fantastic job. On that night, Friday night, when they give a speech. I think
Yes.
I found that's very, very rewarding for the audience and for our community to have the first-hand experience, listen to what they say. I think that's a part of the beauty of the ceremony. The
There's a
program.
group of video photographers too who put together a short clip of what
Right.
these people
Oh, yeah.
have been doing and what their artists are
Yeah,
like.
those videos just. I think I don't know exactly when they started, because I think it's recent years.
Yes, it
but
has evolved.
yeah, but I think they just get better and better.
Yes, I think so too. And the next one was Susan Curtis, and she was again interested in sewing and interested in theater and creation of theater costumes. So she became a local costumier.
I did not meet her before Friday night, so that was the first time. Yes, you are right. It's amazing what she did.
So, then Lance Dixon we know very well because he's got a Dixon Graphics.
Right,
And
a printmaker.
And
yeah.
he had to learn how to print the subtle details that you get in artwork. So Charlotte Brady, who reproduced some of her watercolors, had to teach him how to pick up watercolor details. And so he has become a factor in producing art in this community.
Dave, do you know in the history here in Champaign there was a printer maker and a printer shop by Warren Johnson? I saw a lot of his prints, but never met this guy in person.
He was in this building.
He was in this building?
Yes.
Wow.
He did some printing. Yes, he was printing silkscreen prints.
Yes,
and,
yes.
And yes, he lived out on Staley Road, and in the landscape where you could see the.
Right.
He was on a moraine, Champagne moraine. He could look over the landscape. So much of his art was.
Yeah, during my time here, and I have come across many of his prints. Some of them are fascinating, and I collected some, and I actually used some of them for my exhibitions.
Yes. The color print scene has been rather difficult. For a while, we had Xerox copies that were really very rugged. The colors were extreme.
But there's no comparison of this traditional in the etching, engraving, wood block cut prints, or in the silver printing, compared to the the photocopy or now digital printing. You know.
So Lance has been part to that, and often a contributor to printing efforts of 40 North and others. Following Lance, there was a young guy,
Yeah.
Alan Curry,
Mm-hmm.
no, John Curry, and
Mm.
he's in the student category.
Mm.
So finding himself,
Mm.
finding digital
Right.
events, and although not everyone enjoys digital reproduction,
Mm-hmm.
some of the comic strips that are done on video and also I've been asking gaming people if they could include games that were kind of complex and art involved. And
Oh yeah.
we haven't quite reached that stage yet.
Oh, now the modern technology and the new developments like digital camera and 3D printing and computer Photoshop, you name it. I think just move us to a very different world of how you create art. But I
Yes.
think fundamentally, I can't remember who said this. I quoted him several times, and basically what he says is art is not about the technique, art is not about paper, art is not about the campus, art is about the idea.
Yes, and he's from a black community, so he has interest in legalities that go behind the ability of the black community to contribute their
Right.
expertise.
Okay.
Then we had, I think we had B. Nettle,
Oh yeah,
and B. Nettle has been head of the photography department, but
not just the head, and actually she started that program.
and the degree program
Right.
so
Right.
that you can
Well-
get your
well-
degree in photography now.
Well, according what she said was photography as a major.
Yes.
At the university.
And David has some background in that. Did you encounter B. Nettle?
I sure don't. If you want to expand on that a little bit, where would I have met her? I don't know her.
She
I don't-
replaced Art Sensabar, who was in charge of photography in the fine arts department.
I'm afraid I'm out of my depth here, so I will just step back.
Okay.
No, I don't know by name or reputation, frankly.
Okay.
I'm out of that.
And her husband, Lionel, used to have a shop just down the road from Weft.
Where the pipe shop is now.
Yeah.
Sorry, was that the pipe shop?
No.
Oh, sorry.
He was in as a framer in the Illinois Central Building, where you used to have traction vehicles.
So
go
that's
in.
where.
So
Yeah.
it was also, for those that are interested, a Royer building.
Yes. Since I'm very interested in the art history of university and the local art history, and I have a lot of artworks created by university alumni, professor, faculty, students, you name it, in my collection. And I always wanted to get a piece of her photography, but I just don't know.
It's very various.
Yeah, where to find them? So last Friday I asked her. She said, "Oh, they are available. You can check online." I'm going to
Well,
check.
the online has changed things a lot.
Absolutely.
The cell phone that we have can take photographs, and so everyone is kind of an artist. And one of the interesting artists was a band director, and he
The high school.
yes,
Okay. Yes.
and he was kind enough to say that everyone can do art. You don't have to be a genius. You don't. There are things that you can do, and he, as a teacher, has the kindness to be able to figure out who can do what and when. And I let me see if I have his name here.
Everyone can be an artist as John Kirk.
So I might have missed.
Yeah, this one, John Curry. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he graduated with a music degree, I think, and was lucky enough to get a job where his mentors allow him the freedom to do what he likes to do, and he's traveled well with these bands, and the students are very interested in what he does. There were a bunch of people who were nominated for an award but didn't get one, and they were put on the stage for a while. There were thank yous to the people who created the videos. There were people who created the opportunity to have this event. And then Kelly White harangued the crowd for a while to suggest that what we're expending in art is a very, very small proportion of the budget of these communities. And she was encouraging people to think more about investing in art. And if the city is going to have a $250 million hockey situation, which will have an opportunity for a large event, then we have to know where is the place of art in that. And Kelly White, associated with 40 North, actually got $20,000 recently from the city of Champaign. But there was more than that. There was the thought that we need to organize to encourage artists in downtown Champaign. It's been a little bit of a problem in that years ago, everyone left the city to go to the malls. And now they're coming back, and there's gentrification. And we wonder how the city will plan for that gentrification.
Yeah, Dave, do you know this? I heard in the past the state had a program, any state funded buildings had to have a portion spent on the art.
And I think quite a few of the sculpted pieces that we have around town come with that funding. There's also the Arts Council, which also supports WEFT. And it is purist in a way that it mainly deals with art. So if you're a multi-dimensional applier, you have to sort yourself out so that you can apply with the art-only side of things. But the world is getting to be more diverse. So you have places like Beckman where there's an orientation to saying we need purists, but we also need teams.
I see.
And so some of these people were working, like the costumier person was working with a team of people, and the band person was doing likewise. There is something that you might watch. The university has produced people who are interesting national level artists. Sousa was here, and there's going to be a Sousa meeting. I think it is perhaps on the 15th. I don't have the right date, but it's dealing with the Sousa influence on having school bands. And, but art and surrounding activities are often dropped out of educational offerings before other items go. And so we have to be careful to retain those small plots of artists that can do interesting things. You have a national background. You have been part of the Asian Centre in, and I wonder if you could say something about the international side of things. You have a background in China and then in England, and it's an area where we have to be concerned about whether we take images from Africans and claim them as our own. Have you just expand a little bit on the international level art?
Okay. I'm not quite sure what exactly your question, but I think I will elaborate and to say three things here. First, answer your question, and should outside people taking African art and put in? Actually, it has been a long debate. In fact, the African, in the Western museums, American museums, art galleries, those so-called African art projects. In fact, they were not created as art. They were created for their daily life use, ritual, and ceremony, costume, and so on and so forth. However, and most of Western people, and they found they are very beautiful, interesting, exotic, and then so they bought them or whatever. They got them and display in the museum, and so there's very much a difference. So I think people should go to University Granite Art Museum. They have African art gallery and the display, and I think the curator Allison did a wonderful job for reinstalling and the African gallery, and then shows very precisely and very academically show people what those objects, what their history and their use, their meaning, and so that's the first. And the second, since I was born in China and came to the West to study to England first and come to here, and U of I has have been living here for over 20 years, more than 20 years. And then I will say a little bit about the importance of international connections. And then I wrote several articles on the history, and we did at the Spurlock Museum, we did an exhibition 2015 on the China U of I connection. And then if you look back the history, and the UI-China connection started 1908, when the fifth president of university, Edmund James, and wrote a letter to the U.S. President Roosevelt, and suggesting to set up supporting the idea, setting up an China educational fund for Chinese students come to U.S. to study in this country, and then that was the beginning. But here I don't have time. I don't want to go into the details, but there are many publications I wrote, and then also other people write. So you can check on this. And the third, I want to answer or elaborate on your question was the international cultural arts exchange. And now we have the internet, as you mentioned earlier. The internet just totally changed our life, our daily life. Now the world is getting smaller and smaller. And then at your fingertips, you can get information or almost everything from other culture, other country, and then so the boundaries of the cultural boundaries, I think, are beginning to disappearing in a way, or let's say no longer those physical boundaries. I think however, that's why the international exchange, international interactions, no matter what, in culture, in art, those become daily life, become our daily life. I think that's important. And then I think everyone benefits from those international, global exchange, ideas, arts, culture, you name it.
So, when you look at students,
Okay.
are students coming here for art, or is it more for the computer details, the scientific side of things? Do you have a bunch of Chinese students, for instance, that are interested in art and want to bring it up so that they can cover that massive interest in art, but still boils their interest so that it gets to be active? Do you have active artists from the East in the University of Illinois, for instance?
Yes, well, traditionally, the Chinese people, and they go overseas to study. They always wanted to study the so-called hard science, and arts are not their priority. And I don't know exactly why, but that's so. I think before 90s, and hardly here I knew any Chinese students came to here to study art, and now. But recently, when we came to 21st century, and especially recent started like 2010 onwards, we gradually have more Chinese students come here to study at the School of Art and Design. But still, I don't know any study fine art. And even they came to study at the art school. And most of them focusing on design, industrial design.
Yes.
And I did not know anyone study like painting, so on and so forth. So let's to answer your question. I don't know exactly what's the reason, but I think that's a tradition, that's a phenomenon. Chinese people come to UFI. We have more than 5,000 students enrolled at UFI currently, and but I think a majority of them in other disciplines like engineer, science, chemistry.
So does engineering become an art?
Oh, yeah.
So I see. I go to railroad engineering seminars because I deal with prairie preservation on railroads, and that's the only place where it's been protected. That's the only place where you have soils. But I get that.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think in the future of the university or research, whatever, it has to be multidisciplinary, and because one single field may not do the work.
Yes, I have difficulties with engineers that don't have any biology, for instance. And so, whereas I'm taking out invasive trees, the engineer may be planting trees at the other end of the railroad, because one doesn't really realize the biodiversity and the invasion of the tree that is being planted.
That's true. Another example is Beckman Institute. They have a lot of programs, and I was amazed to see some of those art-related, like imaging, and use the computer and modern technology to create three-dimensional imaging, or virtual reality, so on and so forth. And then they can be applied to other sciences. For example, because of my background of medicine, a few months ago at the Champaign Park Public Library, there was a seminar. I think it's a program called the Tuesday at 10, and there was an engineer, a professor from Beckman Institute, showed how to apply the imaging software to make a diagnosis of cancer. That's just the phenomenal.
Yes, well, there has been this monolithic interest in pure science and discovery, but I think we're moving into an area where we have the pure, but we also have the general. And yes, it does
Dave,
include.
what do you mean pure?
Well, yes, it's a very concentrated interest in a part of science. It's like Madame Curie, who was an engineer in a way, but I wonder how art would fit into her dimensions.
I see.
I see the anthropologists are on the edge of things. You're explaining that this is part of what was. If you look at Australian Aboriginals, you can often see markings in that are anthropological rather than art. But there are also modern Aboriginal artists that come with a type of watercolors or artwork that it includes that background. And they sell very well because they have that character that is not there in their white counterparts. They're Stone Age people who have had to come a long way in a few years.
Right. In Chicago, there are two, I don't know if you know, Joe Brothers, and the big name artists in Chicago, and but they originally came from China, and however, and they were inspired by a local cave painting in Guangxi province in China. But now, when they if we look at those images of the rock cave paintings, and it's absolutely, people would see them as very contemporary, modern art, rather than 1,000 years ago, and our ancestors painted in the caves or on the rock.
So, do you find a seat for art in the community colleges, like Parkland College?
Oh yeah, I think Parkland College is a great community college, and I like the concept because as far as my understanding goes, community colleges are designed to meet people's need, and they can get their higher education, and in a very flexible their time schedule and the life schedule. They can do evening classes. They can do weekend classes.
It's flexible.
They're flexible. I think Parkland College has done a tremendous job, provided that opportunity for people want to get a higher or college education.
We had an interesting one at Parkland College. We were teaching a reading the landscape course, and an art institute in Chicago school professor came and then suggested that we teach an artist in the landscape course, which we did for many years. It was a summer course. That sort of spin-off comes from an administration which allows a fair bit of movement in different directions.
Yes, Parkland College offers many disciplines and classes, and I was told, I did not verify, and some university art school, Yoffai art school students went back to Parkland College to take this foundation classes because they think Parkland College offers those like drawing classes and those foundation classes are very vague and very solid, let's say.
There's a tendency in the community colleges for teachers to be there to teach and not necessarily to be there to research.
Right.
So when you're adjacent to a research university, it takes a lot of the load off the research paradigm and gives you a chance to move in a different manner. I'm going to look at
5 minutes, 4 minutes actually.
Okay. I think I want to say thank you to Ian and his constant involvement in things. I go to the second-hand store and he's looking for frames. It helps to bring people together, and we thank you for doing that. And
thank you. It's interesting to. That's the first time I came to this radio station. I've been to your office and studio many times. You remember, Dave?
Yes.
And I purchased some of your prints and for Prairie landscaping.
Yes,
and
there has been an applied side to that. We do high contrast prints so that you can put your own imagination into the picture.
Do you still do those prints?
No, we have morphed into preserving the little bit of prairie that's left. The state has managed to preserve 0.01% of the prairie that was here, and 2/3 of the state was prairie. And so there are little pieces here and there that we try to preserve, and there are pieces that are kind of corrupted, but they're the only indication of prairie.
Why the state does not interested in preserving it? Is that for economic reason,
that has been a political
or is
thing,
that is that ignorance, or they are not interested in art?
I think it's a complex state, and the politics has changed now. But just a year ago, we lost 33 miles of railroad bed that was kind of loaded with prairie, because there was not the money to be involved to challenge wanting 7 or 8 more rows of corn and soybeans. So I think it has changed a little bit now, but once again, the proportionality of money assigned to arts is very low, and also to environment and ecology. And I think that's not peculiar to the U.S. I think I talked to Asian students a lot, and I ask them about their ecology, and they don't always know very much about their own ecology. So yes, we have a science-oriented university. It's more so that's a state university, and so that attitude filters over. So you have to depend on other agencies like the School of the Art Institute in Chicago to try and fill that gap. But then again, you have to have board members that are oriented to showing big art, and sometimes the little guys get pushed aside. But the internet, interestingly, has helped to let the little guys get an involvement in art, and I think that's very good.
Yeah, Dave, let me ask you, do you remember this, we know this, when I first came to Champaign in the 90s, every day 5 o'clock afternoon, and there was a music, I think it's music puzzle program, radio program, and that program, a presenter always started with this one sentence, a great nation deserves great art.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
And then, and after many, many years, I'm thinking, and then I think, why a great nation deserves great art? Because a great nation creates great art.
Yes, I think we're out of time, and thank you
Okay.
very much for coming.
Thank you.
And remember that there is an annual general meeting of the Grand Prairie Friends, and Wendy Garrison will be here to visit, and there's also a Kickapoo Trail promotional on Friday.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you record?
This is Dave Monkey, Prairie Monk, WAFT, Champaign, 90.1 on your FM dial.
And Dave on the board. As always, the views and opinions expressed are solely those of the speakers and no one else.